Hi everyone, Luke Davids here. Welcome to week 4 of the songwriting series. I hope you guys are enjoying these videos so far and are finding some helpful pointers that you can apply to your own songwriting. If you have any specific questions or things you'd like me to cover in upcoming videos, please let me know in the comments below. Last week we took a look at the second of the 5 key elements, groove, and covered its 3 main factors. If you haven't had a chance to watch that video yet, be sure to go back and watch it. I'll put the link in the description. This week we're going to cover the 3rd key element, chord progression. Now this is one of my favorite parts of songwriting. I love pulling from all different influences to flavor my chord progressions. But let's recap real quick. A chord progression is simply the chords you use and the order you use them in. And the goal of the chord progression is to harmonically support the melody without getting in the way. So your chords are like the support beams for the melody. And although the chords play a supporting role, they do have a big impact on the overall mood of your song. So depending on your lyrical theme, you'll want to approach your chord writing a little differently. If you're looking for a brighter, happier sound, you'll want to err on the side of more major chords. And a sadder or darker sound, you'll want to use more minor chords. Then if you're looking to put some edge into your chords, you might be using some minor 7 chords or some augmented chords, etc. But if you're a chord freak like I am, it's easy to get carried away here. Generally, I see songwriters that fall into 2 main categories. There are those songwriters who've been playing their main instrument for a long time and usually have a really good idea about music theory and love experimenting with the more complex chords. Then on the other side of the spectrum are the writers who are either newer to their instrument or they only really use it as a tool to write with. They don't necessarily have a great idea of music theory, they just know enough to get by. Both groups have their pros and cons when it comes to chord writing. For the chord freaks like me, if you want to get crazy with your chord progressions, you'll know exactly how to do it. But this can sometimes lead to overcomplicating your chord progression and getting in the way of the melody. Anytime your chord progression is more intriguing than the melody and is drawing the attention away from it, you know it's probably time to step back and do a little bit of tweaking or simplifying with your chords. For the other group, you'll likely never run into this problem. Your melody is going to stay as the focal point for the listener, which is exactly what you want. However, you may find that your songs all start to sound a little too similar if you're using the same 4 or 5 basic chords in all of your songs. So what we're going to do today is cover a chord writing tool that can benefit both groups. It's an approach to chord writing that can help mature the sound of your chord progression while still letting the melody have the main share of the listener's attention. And the tool we're going to use to do this is chord inversions. So a chord inversion involves moving the notes of the chord around so that a different note is played as the root. This is similar to slash chords, which for guitar players you may be familiar with. This slash chord we have on screen, C/G or C over G, would mean that you play a C major chord with a G note in the bass. So a C chord with a G on the bottom. Chord inversions are similar to this, but they allow you to get a little more specific, so let's dive in. We're going to start with a simple C major chord in its root position, so our notes from the bottom up will be C, E, and G. Now in order to create our first chord inversion, we're going to take the root note, which is a C, and move it up an octave, which will give us a C major first inversion. So you can hear we've created a slightly different sounding chord using the same 3 notes. Now to get to our second inversion, we'll just repeat the process. So we'll take the root note, which is now an E, and move it up an octave to give us a C major second inversion. This is also the C over G slash chord we went over just a moment ago. So let's hear all 3 chords back to back. So that's 3 quite distinctly different sounds we got out of the same C major chord just by moving the root note around. We didn't have to add any 7ths or 9ths, we didn't have to diminish anything. Just a C major chord and its 2 inversions. For chords with more notes like 7th chords, you'll have more inversions to work with, so more options to choose from. Now let's play around with this idea a little and see how using chord inversions can make an otherwise very basic and common chord progression sound a little more unique. So this is the chord progression I'm going to be using, C, G, F, and G, or 1, 5, 4, 5. I'll start out by playing each chord in its root position, and then I'll start to play around with some different inversions to make the chord progression a little more interesting. So as you can hear, there's quite a variety of things you can do with just a few basic chords by utilizing the power of chord inversions. These are going to be easiest to implement on piano just because of the way it's laid out, but with just a little bit of focus, you can figure these out on guitar as well. This is a really useful tool to use if you have a very basic sounding chord progression that you want to spice up a little bit, or if you have a progression that's sounding a little too busy and you want to tone it down without becoming too simple. So that's it for this week's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know how using chord inversions works for you. Do you find it a helpful tool? Are they helping your chord writing at all? Let me know in the comments below. Next week, we're going to cover the fourth element, melody, and talk about a formula you can use to help achieve maximum emotional impact with your melody writing. Thanks again for watching, and if you liked this video, please feel free to like, comment, or share it with any other songwriters you know. I'll see you guys next week. Bye.